Welcome to Regulate and Rewire, an anxiety and depression podcast where we discuss the things I wish someone would have taught me earlier in my healing journey. I'm your host, Amanda Armstrong, and I'll be sharing my steps, my missteps, client experiences, and tangible research-based tools to help you regulate your nervous system, rewire your mind, and reclaim your life. Thanks for being here. Now let's dive in. Welcome to the final episode, part 9 of my Back to the Basics series. Over the past 8 episodes, we have explored how the nervous system plays a central role in anxiety and depression, the importance of regulation skills, the stress bucket concept, and even touched on blood work and the truth about the chemical imbalance theory. We together have taken a deep dive into understanding anxiety and depression through a neuroscience and whole human lens. And for today's conversation, I want to help bring all of these pieces together and want this episode to serve both as a review as well as a roadmap for how you might want to bring elements of my approach into your own healing journey. I'm going to start by revisiting each of the past 8 episodes with just a little reminder of some of the core elements that we covered. So we started this series. Part 1 was all about getting to know your nervous system, the nervous system basics, understanding that your nervous system is constantly scanning for safety and danger cues in those 3 places. Remember, outside, inside, and in between. And it is shifting your physiological state, which impacts your psychological state based on what it perceives and how it is interpreting what it perceives based on your past lived experiences and current life circumstances. Then in part 2, we unpacked the 6 different nervous system states. Our 3 primary states, the green zone of regulation, yellow zone of activation, and red zone of shutdown. And then the 3 mixed states of play, stillness, and freeze, and talked about how each of these states has a unique profile of sensations, emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and how we talked in this episode about the nervous system, and I offered an invitation for you to become more familiar with your nervous system, how you know that you are in one of those states, how you can answer, where am I on that nervous system ladder in any given moment. Then in part 3, we talked about why we get stuck. We examined how our nervous systems get stuck in dysregulation. And typically it is either because of a combination of, number 1, that we are living in a biologically unsupportive way. This is where I shared with you that plant analogy, right? When I have a plant in a dark corner that's not getting enough water, I don't look at that plant and be like, oh yeah, disordered plant. No, it's not getting the basic things that it needs for the health of its biological system to thrive. So of course it's getting symptoms. Of course it is suffering. And we should expect the same from our biological systems as well. The other reason that we often get stuck in states of dysregulation is because of our past lived experiences, because we are living in a chronically stressed out state that is causing us to misinterpret situations, that is causing our lives to feel less safe than they might actually be. In part 4, we talked about the stress bucket. So this is an analogy that is a core tenet of our practice and the work that we do with clients. This is where we help our clients understand and explore their unique stress load, both their baseline and daily stressors. Those are the 2 categories of stressors I talked about in that episode. And understanding that we all have a limited carrying capacity. So many of us are sitting here like, I don't know why I'm struggling. And then we sit down and do a stress bucket assessment with them. And they're like, oh yeah, that bucket's really heavy. That bucket's been overflowing for years now. And it is that overflow, that heaviness that pushes us further and further down that nervous system ladder into states of activation or shutdown. It's that overflow, it's that heaviness that creates our symptoms when we have exceeded our capacity to carry. Then we moved into talking about reactive regulation. And we spent 2 episodes here talking about these in-the-moment tools that help us to resource ourselves or shift our state when we notice that dysregulation is happening. When I can say, ooh, I'm in the yellow zone, I'm feeling really activated, or I'm shut down. These are the tools that instead of spiraling out around, oh, I'm so anxious right now and I don't know what to do, This is your toolkit. I'm so anxious. I'm so activated right now. And here are some things that I can try to support myself right now. Then we moved on to proactive regulation. So if reactive regulation is the in the moment tools when you're already dysregulated, proactive regulation are the various things that you do so that you find yourself in states of dysregulation less often. This is the long-term strategic approach to creating a more regulated life, to addressing the root cause, to looking at your stress bucket consistently over and over and over again and saying, okay, what feels meaningful and accessible for me to change right now? Awesome. I'm going to go do that work for a little while. And either I'm going to make traction and I'm going to see improvement or I'm not. And I'm going to be frustrated, but oh man, no big deal. I can come back to my stress bucket and I can say, maybe that wasn't the place to start, or it was. Where else is going to be accessible and make meaningful change in my healing journey? So it's proactive regulation, how we can engage in more regulated living. Then in part 8, we talked about the role of blood work and touched on the chemical imbalance theory and how understanding the role of your underlying physiology and the ways that it can create or contribute to your symptoms or symptom intensity. It's important. It's important because there's no amount of talk therapy or meds that is going to heal symptoms of anxiety or depression that are caused by micronutrient deficiencies or hormone imbalances, a variety of different measurable factors that can, when addressed strategically and personally for you, bring a lot more stability to your system. And the reason that I structured this series in this way, in this order, is because each of these episodes, these concepts build upon each other. You cannot effectively use reactive regulation tools if you do not understand your different nervous system states, because there's different tools that work a little better for different states than others. So you need to be able to answer the question, what state am I in? Where am I on that nervous system ladder? And then what tools best support me when I find myself here? And you can't create a sustainable, proactive approach if you don't know what is in your stress bucket. Optimizing lab results will only get you so far if the rest of your life is dysfunctional, is dysregulating. And none of this works if you don't have a compassionate understanding that your symptoms make sense. Your symptoms make sense given your unique circumstances. And this integrated approach is what makes healing possible. Not just temporary management of symptoms, but truly addressing the underlying root causes of anxiety and depression. And one of the most important takeaways from this series, in my opinion, is that healing requires us to consider both our physiology and our psychology. Like I've said before, we take a physiology first, but not a physiology only approach to healing. Think of it this way. Your body and mind are constantly communicating. And 80% of this mind-body conversation originates in the body from the nervous system. So if your body is depleted, if you are dealing with nutrient deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, chronic inflammation, chronic stress, you are always go, 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 go on, and you are flooding your system with a cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol. If you're sleep deprived or overly sedentary, all of these things directly impact your brain function and your nervous system states. When enough of these basic biological needs go unmet, anxiety and depression are not disorders. They are natural physiological responses to unnatural conditions. And we cannot simply mindset our way out of a nervous system that is stuck in survival mode. And at the same time, psychological factors are also very important. Looking at things like past trauma, unhealthy relationships, a lack of belonging or sense of purpose, a lack of play or creativity in your life. These also are all things that load up your stress bucket, that contribute to dysregulation and keep us stuck in states of survival. For example, let's say that somebody is experiencing anxiety. Let's say you're experiencing anxiety and comprehensive blood work reveals a vitamin D deficiency, or a thyroid imbalance, which are maybe at the root or just contributing to these symptoms of anxiety. But let's say you're also working a high stress job and or carrying around some unresolved trauma that's also keeping your nervous system stuck in a high alert state. In this case, addressing only the physiological factors won't lead to complete healing. But that is likely where this person could benefit the most from starting. Because when you are trying to make big changes in your life, maybe changing a job or setting boundaries at your job, when you are trying to turn back towards unresolved trauma, that's deep work, that's hard work. It is naturally a little destabilizing for our internal system. Well, if we can remedy that vitamin D deficiency, if we can get on a protocol that helps to balance our thyroid, that's automatically going to take some load out of our stress bucket. It's going to stabilize and create capacity to take on some of this deeper work, the psychological work, the beliefs around your job and setting boundaries and self-worth, looking at the parts of your past that were really overwhelming. This is why our approach is so comprehensive. It is so important that we consider whole person, whole life, mind, body, circumstances, past, present, and to create a personalized path forward. Mental health looks different for everyone. What contributes to the activation or the shutdown of your system looks different than anybody else's. And so your path forward, the path to healing, is going to look unique as well. And at the heart of everything we've discussed is this really simple but powerful equation, which is that the current state of your nervous system, your anxiety, your depression, your activation, your shutdown, the current state of your nervous system makes sense. It equals your past lived experiences and your current life circumstances. And this equation reminds us that everything you experience makes sense when we consider both your history and your present reality. When you consider the things you've been through, this might be the things that happened to you, or the things that you didn't get enough of that you needed to feel safe, seen, supported. And that resulted in various protective patterns. And then we look at your current reality. This includes your habits, environments, relationships, health. And part of that also includes acknowledging, or at least being aware of your genetics or your accounts for biodiversity. But those factors alone are never the full picture. Your anxiety or depression is not random. It's not a character flaw, and it is not something that you should just get over or accept as an unchanging element for the rest of your life. Most often, they are normal responses to abnormal circumstances. And when we truly embrace this understanding, and what I see every day in our client work with folks, what I hear almost every day in some capacity from those of you listening to this podcast, is that understanding your symptoms through this way helps you to shift from self-blame to self-compassion, from hopelessness or feeling stuck to glimmers of hope. Instead of asking what is wrong with me, we can start asking what happened to me, or what's happening in my life right now that's contributing to the overwhelm, to how I feel. What needs to change in order for me to be well? And this is why in our approach, we don't pathologize your experience. And instead, we look at your unique puzzle pieces, your past trauma, your current stressors, your lifestyle habits, your biology, your relationships, and then help you to create a healing path forward that makes sense for you. Now, in this episode, you may hear me reference our approach, my approach, not because I'm trying to sell you on working with us. If this resonates and that feels like the path you want to take, amazing. I'm always thrilled about being invited into your healing journeys. But I want to make it clear when I say my approach or our approach, that I am not saying that this is the only approach to mental health or healing. There are many, many, many different frameworks for healing that work well for a variety of different folks. This is ours. This is the approach that I have spent the last many years creating because it filled in the blanks of what was missing for me in my healing journey and has since served thousands of other individuals. And so if you are somebody who is curious about working with us, either in our one-on-one coaching program or joining the membership, then this series and this kind of wrap-up episode helps you make that decision from a more informed place about who we are, how we approach healing. And if that resonates with you, again, I'd love to connect. Or maybe you are somebody who is on more of a self-healing journey right now, or you are using this information to supplement work that you're already doing in another place or with another incredible practitioner. Also amazing. With the rest of this conversation, listen through the lens that is most appropriate for you, with the question of, what has this series offered me? Does this feel like the approach I want to take? Or what pieces of this approach can I weave into what I'm already doing or have already done? What we have found makes an effective long-term plan towards wellness and healing is one that explores and addresses and integrates multiple arenas in our life. Physical health, through understanding our physiology, optimizing our blood work, creating supportive lifestyle habits. Mental health, through addressing thought patterns, beliefs, developing emotional regulation skills. Deeper trauma work. Relational health, building connection, boundary setting, creating safety in relationships. Environmental health, through adjusting your surroundings to better support your nervous system. It's not either or. It's all of these dimensions of our experience being considered and working together. And what I experienced that kept me stuck in my healing journey for a really long time in mainstream healthcare was this fragmentation of these different aspects. Go to the doctor for your body, a therapist for your mind, maybe a nutritionist for your diet. But your internal system doesn't operate in fragments. Everything is connected. And when you understand this interconnectedness, you start to see how a good night's sleep might be just as important for your anxiety as addressing a limiting belief. You recognize that addressing vitamin deficiencies might be as crucial for your depression as processing past trauma. And you realize that sometimes the most profound healing happens not through dramatic interventions, but through relationship building, through play, through consistent small changes that layer over time to create a more supportive reality for your nervous system. And now understanding all of this conceptually is one thing, but putting it into practice in your daily life is another. And that's where the change happens. Is not by knowing better or knowing different, but by doing better and doing different. So a natural question at this point is, how do you take what we've discussed over this series, the nervous system, regulation skills, stress bucket, and actually apply it in your life? And so what I have done my best to do here is to create a framework, some recommended questions to reflect on and things to look at to start integrating these concepts into your healing journey. And the first place to start is to assess your current reality, to take a really honest look at where you are right now. Asking yourself, my question for you is, where do you spend most of your time on that nervous system ladder? Can you answer that question? Are you primarily in a regulated state, or are you more frequently in states of activation, freeze, or shutdown? And how do you know? Are you tuned in, a skill we call interoceptive awareness? How do you know that that's where you find yourself most often? What tells you that you're in the yellow zone versus the green zone? Because the more aware you become of how you uniquely experience states of dysregulation, the sooner you can catch yourself in those states of dysregulation, the sooner you can support yourself or shift course. Assessing your current reality means looking at your stress bucket. What's in your stress bucket? Can you identify the major stressors and the minor stressors in your life? Because oftentimes we find that clients, they have their major stressors, but what is really overwhelming is just this accumulation of 100 different tiny things. This can be anything from work to relationships, your to-do list, your physical health, daily habits, past experiences that still you're carrying around that are heavy beliefs. Looking at those two categories of stressors. What are your baseline stressors? And then what are your daily stressors? How full is your stress bucket on a regular basis? And then looking at reactive tools. First, what reactive tools do you already have? What are the things that you turn to that already work for you, that help you to feel more supported, more resourced, or to shift your state? And then which ones might you need to develop? In what situations do you feel like you lack tools? Where do you find yourself spiraling out or being more reactive or shut down than you want to be? So with Assessing this part of your current reality, consider what you already naturally do when you're stressed and what's effective versus what might not be so helpful, and what tools you still need in your toolbox. And then looking at what proactive changes feel the most meaningful and accessible for you. Looking at your daily lifestyle habits. Are you sleeping enough? Are you eating enough? Are you drinking enough? If we are not rested, nourished, or hydrated, it makes sense that there are alarm bells going off in our system. Are you moving? The healthiest version of your brain lives inside a body in motion. But also, some of the proactive healing could be looking at those hard, heavy things from our past. And we do all of this proactive approach happens in small, sustainable steps. What is a small, sustainable thing that I can take on to create an internal and an external lived experience that is more supportive to regulation? So step one is just to assess your current reality. And this is not going to happen by sitting down in one journal session with these questions, but that could be a place to start. And then letting that awareness build. And so that would be step two. Number one is assess what already is within your field of awareness. And then step two is to build on that awareness. And one of the most important places to start, I think, is to begin practicing nervous system mapping in your daily life. So throughout your day, can you notice when you shift states throughout the body? So many of us have become so disconnected from our body. We are living in our mind, we're living in our thoughts. For a variety of reasons, we've had to just kind of numb out and quiet our body-based experience, but that's 80% of this. So can you put a Post-it note on the back of your door? I love toilet check-ins. They're so simple. Just a Post-it note that says, what state is your nervous system in? Or where are you on that nervous system ladder? Look at it. This is a place your body is going to force you to be at least a few times a day. A couple more than that if you're actually hydrated. Instead of sitting there and mindlessly scrolling or checking out or letting your brain spiral out about how stressed out you are, can we have a visual cue that says, hey, take this moment and just tune in. How am I doing? What state am I in? Do I know what's contributing to that? Is there anything I can do right now to support myself? And this awareness alone can be transformative. It is amazing what happens when your mind-body system just realizes that you're listening instead of ignoring. The way that it softens or what it's willing to share with you to help you understand. And then throughout your day, you can also build on that awareness of what's triggering these shifts. Oh, that's attached to the past, or that's attached to present overwhelm. That's this part of my stress bucket. And this starts to create a system that has enough awareness to step into change. Where we usually start with clients is to help them build their reactive toolkit. We don't want to say, hey, get really good at noticing when you're dysregulated and good luck with what to do there. We say, hey, we're going to help you get really aware of when you're dysregulated, and let's support you in building out a toolkit so that you know what to do. What are the 3 to 5 tools or practices that work best for your unique nervous system to help you feel supported or to shift you towards more regulation? So remember, reactive regulation is like that first aid kit for your nervous system. This can involve things like breath work, movement, grounding, self-compassion. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of different things that we have helped clients identify as uniquely regulating for them and the unique circumstances in which they need these tools. And so reactive tools, think about it. My stress bucket is overflowing. I'm going to poke some holes in it. We don't want to spend the rest of our life needing to poke holes in our bucket. We want a bucket that's not so heavy. We want a bucket that's not overflowing so often. But many of you are coming to a podcast like this. Many of our clients come to work with us because their bucket is already overflowing. So we're going to start by giving you the quick ways to just get an inch to build a little bit more capacity in your system. We're going to poke some holes when we notice our bucket's overflowing. I'm dysregulated. Now what? That's your reactive toolkit. Then what happens is to look at that stress bucket and choose one place, one proactive area to focus on. What feels both meaningful and doable to address? Maybe it's improving sleep, setting boundaries, addressing a nutrient deficiency shown in your blood work. Small, consistent changes in one area creates capacity for the next area, the next change that you want to take on. and we're aiming for sustainable progress, not perfection. Trauma is overwhelming. Healing often happens in baby steps. And what needs to happen all along this journey is to make space for you to acknowledge and celebrate progress, even tiny, subtle ones. And so often, what we find is a really powerful thing that can happen in our coaching sessions or in therapy is that you have somebody else kind of watching your progress bar too. It can be really hard to notice progress when we're living in it ourselves. And one of our favorite things to do as practitioners is to take what a client is presenting sometimes as, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating. This was this, and be like, yeah, I hear that. I see that. And can you acknowledge how even this frustration is different than it might have been 3 months ago or 6 months ago? Do you notice how, even though that's frustrating, you showed up and supported yourself differently? You reacted differently. You did differently in a way that felt more aligned and authentic and supportive for you. And we watch as their face softens and their shoulders drop and they go, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we allow them to sit in and savor that acknowledgement of progress because healing isn't linear. It doesn't happen overnight. Some days feel like success and others feel like steps back, and it's all part of the process. And when we can remember to celebrate and acknowledge each of these steps, when we can maybe even build play into this process, we can heal in a much more compassionate and oftentimes more effective way. It is not regulating your nervous system. It's not about achieving some perfect state of constant regulation. Life is always going to include challenges and stressors. Being a messy human in a messy human world means that you will experience overwhelm. You will experience activation and shutdown in doses. We just don't want to live there anymore. The key to all of this is to become more aware of your unique nervous system's signals and to learn what tools and what approach is best for you. The goal of this work is to build resilience and flexibility and a baseline of regulation that allows you to navigate life's ups and downs without getting stuck in chronic survival mode. And as we wrap up this series, I want to leave you with what I believe is the true invitation of this healing approach. And what this is all about, it's about coming home to yourself. It is a better, more whole way of healing. When we live in chronic states of anxiety or depression, we are living feeling disconnected from ourselves. We lose touch with what we actually want, what we need, what we value, who we are. We operate from survival patterns rather than authentic choice. We may even forget what it feels like to feel like ourselves, to feel good in our own skin. The journey of healing through a nervous system lens is ultimately about reclaiming that sense of connection. It's about creating enough safety in your system and in your everyday life so that you can feel like you're actually living and not just surviving. So that you can feel like yourself or discover who yourself is. It is where you are able to access your inner wisdom, your inner knowing, creativity, joy, and resilience. This is about cultivating and remembering who you are beneath the protective patterns and survival strategies. And this work it's not always easy, and it rarely follows a straight line. Like I mentioned, there's going to be days that feel like progress and days that feel like challenges or steps back. And it's all part of it. You are not broken. Your symptoms make sense. And my promise to you is that healing is possible. And as we conclude this Back to the Basics series, there are 3 main takeaways. Number 1, a whole human approach. Number 2, your symptoms make sense. And number 3, there is a strategic path forward. And I'm going to take just a few moments to elaborate on what I mean by each of these, but also offer 1 to 2 reflection questions with each for you to think about or journal about. Like I said, I wanted this conversation to be as much about a review as is a roadmap. of how you can take what you have learned in this series and apply it to your healing. Takeaway number 1, a whole human approach. Acknowledging that true healing comes from integrating both physiological and the psychological. An approach that explores and acknowledges how your body, your mind, relationships, and environments, your past, your present, are all interconnected. Understanding the interplay between your nervous system, stress bucket, reactive, proactive regulation creates a comprehensive framework for healing that honors your unique experiences and needs. And so if you've been feeling stuck in your healing, consider asking yourself or reflecting on which areas of my life, physical, mental, relational, environmental, feels most neglected in my current healing approach. What small steps can I take to address that? That can be a really profound question to give an honest answer to. Takeaway number 2 is that your symptoms likely make sense. Your symptoms likely make perfect sense given your past lived experiences and your current life circumstances. Your symptoms are not signs of brokenness. They're not here to annoy you. They are messages from your system, a system that is trying to protect you. And understanding this can help you shift from self-blame to self-compassion, which is where safety and true healing exists. A system stuck in survival mode and self-blame is not a flexible system that's very willing to change. And so maybe taking some time to think about or journal, asking yourself this question of how might my perspective shift if I approach my symptoms with curiosity rather than judgment? How might my perspective shift if I start asking what happened to me instead of what's wrong with me? If I were able to apply this equation as truth, that the current state of my nervous system makes sense, equals my past lived experience and current life circumstances, what is one key insight that I gain about why I might be struggling in the way that I am? Then takeaway number 3 is that there is a strategic path forward. Real healing comes from this balanced approach that includes both in-the-moment tools and deeper proactive change that addresses the root cause of dysregulation physiologically and psychologically. The journey of healing, viewed through a nervous system lens, is ultimately about reconnecting with your authentic self, accessing these inner resources, cultivating more of them, and creating a life where you feel safe, resilient, and whole. And so asking yourself, what's one reactive tool that I can practice this week when I notice dysregulation? And then what's one proactive change I feel ready to explore to address some of the weight in my stress bucket? And then a second bonus question here that I think can be a really beautiful experience can also be one that comes with a lot of grief or heaviness, but to take some time to ask, what does coming home to myself mean? And what is one small practice or action that I could incorporate today to cultivate a stronger connection with myself? These questions might be something that you feel ready and prepared to sit with and journal with. These are questions you might want to take and explore with a provider or practitioner that you're already working with. But my promise to you is that there are answers to these questions that will shine lights into areas of healing that could be meaningful and help move you forward. Thank you so much for joining with me for this series, for sticking with me through to the end of this series. Whether you have been with this podcast from the beginning or if these Back to the Basic episodes were your introduction, I am endlessly grateful for the opportunity to share these concepts with you, for the opportunities I get to connect with so many of you through Instagram DMs or email messages, discovery calls. And my deepest hope is that each one of these episodes, that they offer you not just information, but a renewed sense of hope and possibility for your healing. And as always, friend, until next time, I am sending so much hope and healing your way. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Regulate and Rewire podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please subscribe and leave a 5-star review to help us get these powerful tools out to even more people who need them. And if you yourself are looking for more personalized support in applying what you've learned today, consider joining me inside Rise, my monthly mental health membership and nervous system healing space, or apply for our one-on-one anxiety and depression coaching program, Restore. I've shared a link for more information to both in the show notes. Again, thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.